everybody, welcome back to Findmypast from home. It is time for Fridays Live. It's my favourite time of the week. It's your favourite time of the week. It's Jen's favourite time of the week. Jen is in the comments with us today. Please say hello to her. It is her birthday today. She did tell me off for wanting to mention it, but I've just mentioned it anyway. I hope you're all having a great week. It is fantastic to be back with you here today. I've missed it. I feel like it's been ages since my last live session with you guys. So it's really, really good to be back. It's just not the same when it's just me doing comments. I like to be able to talk to you all like this. I really like it. I miss it when I don't do it. Tell me how your week's been. Tell me what you've been up to today, what you're going to be up to this weekend, what the weather is like with you, because it wouldn't be a Fridays Live without us talking about the weather. In Edinburgh, it has been very, very nice for the last week and a half. It gets a bit more overcast in the mornings and then clears up by the afternoon. So it's currently very warm out and I'm here in my windowless office with the door closed. So I currently can't see the sun, but it is worth it. If you are new here, hello, please say hello in the comments to say where you're tuning in from and what you like doing with your family history and things like that, what you like doing outside of family history. My name is Ellie. I run social media for Findmypast. It is a job I absolutely adore. And we do these live sessions every single week on a Friday. And these Friday ones are much more relaxed. We look at new records and we usually have a theme and we usually have a question of the week as well to get the conversation going. We also do expert sessions on a Wednesday as well. And we're normally doing about one of those midweek sessions a week at the moment. Come the autumn time, autumn, winter, we'll probably do more. We have something, very exciting coming to Findmypast early next year, so we'll be talking about that a lot. And also on Monday, Jen is actually doing a session with Lisa Lisson of Are You My Cousin and also NYGNB. Definitely tune back for that. It's going to be at 9 o'clock p.m. UK time, which I think is 11 o'clock Eastern time. Nod for me, Jen. Shake your head for me, Jen. I can't remember. Anyway, I have posted about it on our Facebook page. So if you can tune back in for that, please do. It's going to be fab. If you haven't got your answer in for question of the week yet, it is, which of your ancestors do you think should be famous if they're not already, and why? And when I say famous, I mean recognized. Perhaps they did a great deed. They helped somebody out. They just lived their life to the best of their ability. Basically, I want to hear about your ancestors who have a really good story, but isn't actually well known because they're not famous. Okay, that's what I want to know about this week. Also, I asked on Paul's session on Wednesday on World War I prisoners of war, excuse me, whether today you would like me to talk about celebrity family trees or vintage wedding dresses. And you guys went for celebrity family trees, so that's what we're going to be doing today, which is exciting. But there was a reason for me suggesting vintage wedding dresses as well. And it's because I'm going wedding dress shopping for the first time this weekend, which I'm really excited about. And I get to see my mum and my sisters, and it's going to be really nice. So I'm excited. But hey ho, that is why I thought about doing that. So we'll do new records. Today, we will do question of the week. We will do the celebrity family trees. I've also got an exciting new product update from the product team to share with you as well. And I'll do a little live demo of that, show you how it works and also why we've introduced this as well. So before I crack on, let me say hello to you in the comments because we've got lots of people watching, which is lovely. We've got Patricia saying happy birthday, Jen. Yeah, it's Jen's birthday. We've got a new person in the comments, which is great. Welcome, Diane, tuning in from Slough in Berkshire. She says, I want to start looking for my past and do I use my maiden name? And I think William's actually already answered this, which is fab. Let's bring up William's comment as well. Maiden names are the best way for tracing ancestors as it's their birth name and they're much easier to find. I completely agree with that. There is, on your family tree, I would always enter in a woman's maiden name, but there is actually a feature to add in their profile, their married name or names as well. So it's just a good way to keep track of everything. Claire saying, from Adelaide in the middle of COVID hotspot. Currently isolated. Oh dear. At least I have hobbies at home. It's a good point. Just watched the Olympic opening ceremony. I watched a spot of that over my lunch break. That was really nice. In and amongst, you know, hanging up washing, going to get bread and things like that. I actually don't relax much over my lunch breaks. I'm always doing chores. Okay, who have we got here? Janet's currently following up on my grandfather's prisoner of war records after Wednesday's video from Paul Nixon. Found postcards sent to him by fellow French prisoners of war, and hope to find out about them. That's fantastic, Janet. Let us know how you get on with that. Lots of comment here, which is fantastic. Graham saying, hi Ellie from Wakefield and West Yorkshire. My research is still on pause, waiting on the records office opening up in Edinburgh. Aren't we all? I'm so excited for when that happens again. Sally saying, lovely day here in Oxford. I'm so pleased. The weather, the nice weather is lovely, but I do have a sort of temperature limit. I get to about, I think 20 degrees is like my optimal temperature for outside. Anything hotter than that, and I just can't cope with it, especially with the humidity. I was talking to Jen about this the other day, and Jen has, you know, aircon, and the humidity is quite low because of where she lives, and the humidity here in Edinburgh at the moment is quite high, and I just can't cope with it when it's too hot. But I'm not complaining because I don't want to wish away the nice weather. That is the last thing I want to do. Just want to put that one out there. Okay, so let's do new records first, because we've got a lot to get through today, and I am also acutely aware of my mother and sisters turning up at some point. They are en route. I have told them that they are not allowed to show up before 5 o'clock. They're not allowed to do a surprise, oh, we're here, surprise, because they would do that. And I've told them they're not allowed to because I'm here. If they do that, they're in trouble, basically. Okay, so new records. We have a fabulous selection of new records for you this week, and it is very, very varied, which is great as well. And if you're new to Findmypast, maybe you're not very familiar with us, we add new records to Findmypast every single week. We're committed to this. And I like to think of it as every week we're providing you with a fresh opportunity to make a new discovery, which is just super exciting when you think about it. Like each week, there's a new chance that you're going to add a new node to your family tree. You're going to find a new story. Maybe you'll find a photograph in the newspapers, because we release new newspapers every week as well. Fresh opportunity. It's fab. So at first, we have added 62,000 new records into our Scottish modern civil deaths and burials record set. And these run right up to the present day. They're compiled from various different sources, and these new editions, I believe, are from Clackmannanshire. You can find things like details of your relatives' burial plots, occupations, sometimes even next of kin as well. So these do vary a little bit into the detail that's available. And I had a look at a couple of them just to give you an idea. So I looked for swans in these records because I have ancestors from Dumfriesshire, and one of the surnames that's present in my family tree is Swan. So I had a look for swans, and some of them are obviously more modern than others. And there was quite a modern one, and I found Alice Mary Swan, who's born in 1948, but sadly died in 2003. And for this particular record, I got exact dates for when she was born and when she died, and also where she died as well. So that's the level of the sort of detail I got from that one. Some of the older ones actually have original images too. But what I found is where there are original images available, the person in question on the transcript, there's only an initial available for their first name. So W. Swan, for example, which could be William, could be Walter, buried 30th of September 1875 in Greenside Cemetery in Clackmannanshire. I also get his grave number and also the section too. So if I was to go to that particular cemetery, I know exactly where to go and look. Then there is some with even more detail. So I actually found a burial record for a 3-week-old baby, which was quite sad to see. James Alexander Swan, who died aged only 3 weeks in 1894. And it tells me that he was buried in Bent Cemetery in Hamilton in Lanarkshire. So as I said, varying detail, really worth a look, especially if you've got Scottish relatives and Scottish ancestors. Next up, great for ancestors with the travel bug, 25,000 new records into our Australian inward and outward bound passenger lists. There is no one set format for these passenger lists because the format wasn't regulated, basically. So on one record, you'll find loads of detail, and on another record, you'll find minimal information. It's just based on what was taken at the time, in essence. So some you'll get simply names, others provide more information, and some have original images, some don't. Some will take you through to a different website, like the example I'm about to go through with you now. So I looked for Overthrow in these records. That is my surname, Overthrow, one of my surnames, because apparently I have two. One apparently isn't enough according to my parents. Whatever. Okay, so the record I found is for Douglas George Overthrow. And I find from his record that he arrived somewhere, doesn't actually tell me where, 27th of December, 1970. Then there's a link through for me to follow, and it takes me through to the original passenger card on the National Archives of Australia, which is really, really cool. And this had so much detail on it. So I'm told, first of all, that he was born in England on 31st of July, 1917. He's a printer. He's married. He lives in New Zealand, was heading from Auckland to Australia for a holiday for 24 days. That's so specific, and I love it. Love that. I even get his address, which is so cool, his address in New Zealand, his signature. It was just amazing. The only thing that would have made it better for me is if there was a photograph of him, which is very unlikely on a passenger card, but it was pretty cool. And the next step for me is going to be figuring out how I'm related to him, because I will be related to him because there aren't that many overthrows about. Water. Yeah, definitely check those out. And then I found another example as well. So I found an earlier example. There's a Mrs. Overthrow who travels in 1885 from Sydney to London aboard the ship called the Cusco. And when I say Cusco, I just think of the film The Emperor's New Groove, but that's just me. I learned that she was 21. She was born in 1864. And if I click through to the original image, it tells me that she traveled with an infant, that she was English, and that the infant was in fact Scottish. More research to do there as well. Bit difficult to do that first name, but we might be able to work it out with the birth year, perhaps. Okay, next record set we've got. Excuse me just a second. This is what happens when I talk for long periods of time. So the third record set we've got new this week are the records for the Black Nova Scotians, 1784 to 1837. And these close the loop for now on Black Loyalist records. Definitely check out the other ones we've got available as well. So we've got the London Black Poor for 1786. We've got the Sierra Leone Resettlement Records for 1787. And then we've also got Lord Dunmore's Ethiopian Regiment Records for 1776. So yes, there's lots to explore there. Some people in these records actually escaped slavery in the South, and then some will have been slaves of Black Loyalists. And if you didn't know, Nova Scotia was a British possession from 1710 to 1867, and then it became a founder member of the Confederated Province of Canada, which was, at the time, a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. And there's lots of history to explore there. I really, really recommend checking these records out. They're really, really fascinating. And then newspapers as well, because we love newspapers, and we have newspapers every week too. So we have one brand new title this week. It's the Nottinghamshire paper, the Newark Herald, for 1873 to 1949. So if you have Nottinghamshire ancestors, this is going to be one for you this week. It was first published in 1872, and it appeared every Saturday, and it just cost you a penny. I say just a penny. That was probably a lot of money back then. In fact, it was definitely more than it is now. Moving on. It contains local, national and foreign news and was considered to be politically liberal. So if you're using it for family history research, which you absolutely should be, You can use it for finding your less than law abiding ancestors because it gives you details of the petty sessions and also family announcements as well, which are just the bread and butter for family historians when it comes to newspapers. Plus, it also features details on the graveyard at Newark Cemetery, because during the war, there were Polish airmen that were buried there. And there's a lot of detail on the bravery and the sacrifice of these Polish airmen during World War II. So definitely check that out as well, especially if you have Polish roots from the Nottinghamshire area. We've also updated a whopping 48 titles this week. I'm not going to list all of them because we'll be here all weekend. So I'll just pull out a few examples. So we have added for the Birmingham Mail, 1877 and 1912. For the Evening Star for London, we've added 1842. For the Ladies' Own paper, we've added from 1866 and then 1868 to 1872. And then the Lloyd's List as well, which I know is a favourite among some of you. We've added it from 1913. Please do check out the full list available on our blog. It's in the video description if you want to have a look. And as I said, I'm not reading the full list because, you know, we've all got better things to do than you hear me, listen to me read out a long list of newspaper titles. And before I finish up on new records, I thought it was a perfect time to tease a rather exciting release that we've got next week. I can't tell you what it is because I'll get told off. Jen is currently dancing. You can't see it, but I can see it. I would like to dance too. It's not quite professional to dance on this, but I'll do a little bit of a really, really exciting. I'm not going to say anything as to what they are because I'll give something away and then I will get told off. Mika will tell me off. Jen will probably tell me off as well. Yes, she will tell me off. So basically, check back next Friday. You'll get, if you're subscribed to our newsletters, you'll get the news first thing on Friday. It'll arrive in your email inbox. You can opt into those from your account, your Findmypast account. You can opt into those if you want to. But we always talk about new releases on Fridays Live, and we also we always post the link on social media as well. So just in case you don't get it in your inbox, you can always find it. I'm probably going to get told that I'm teasing you all, which you won't like, but never mind. I'm not at liberty to say. The only thing I'm allowed to say, it's exciting. Okay. Lovely. Now, before I move on, do question of the week. And if you haven't got question of the week in yet, it is, which of your ancestors do you think should be famous and why? Or recognised? We'll say recognised. Pop it in the comments if you haven't already. And I'm just going to have a quick look through some of the comments. Sally says, I've seen you've added parts of the Whitney Gazette. Yes. I always like it when we add something that's particularly personal for somebody. It was like the time we added some North Wales newspapers and I found a description of my grandparents' wedding in it. And the only thing that would have made it better for me would have been a photograph. I do have a photograph of the wedding, but it just would have been nice to see anyway. So yes, Joan saying hello from a beautiful morning near Seattle, excited about the Australia and Scotland new records. Thanks so much. If you're excited about this week's, you'll definitely be excited about next week's. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. Right, let's do question of the week then. And just to give you time to get yours in, if you haven't already, I will let you know my answer, and then I'll also read the few pre-submitted ones we had. So as I said, when I say famous, I mean people who would be well known or recognised for an invention, like a good deed, or just for simply living their best life, were it not for the fact that they're just everyday folks, you know? They weren't necessarily prime ministers or presidents or royalty. I don't have any of those in my family tree, but I want to recognise some of my ancestors because I want to talk about them. And I think all of these stories are worth telling, and it's just a chance for you to share yours. So for me, if any of my ancestors were to be recognised, shall we say, I think it would be my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. I've talked about him many times before, and I do also have there's also a blog post on Findmypast about him, about his war experiences. His name was Cecil Dennis Jones, and he served with Monty's 8th Army during World War II in Egypt and also later in Italy. He was away from home for 4 years. He didn't meet his daughter, his first daughter, my Auntie Audrey, until she was about 3 or 4, I think. He wrote lots of letters home. He sent photographs. He kept a diary. And the letters are just so, so poignant, very much saying that he misses my Nana and that he loves her very much and trying to keep her spirits up. It's all very, very sweet. And my dad, actually, he had all of these in his possession. They now lie with myself and my siblings. So they're really, really lovely to have. So he died in 1960 when my father was only 2, because my father was the youngest of 4. So I never met him. But I do feel like I know him better because I'm so lucky to have these keepsakes of his. And it was something my aunt said recently, because she does family history as well. She's probably the family historian of the family rather than myself. And she said that when she was young, my grandfather would very much be against food waste and wasting water. And it was apparently because he had seen awful water shortages in Egypt during the war. Like they had water rations, apparently. So there was only a small amount of water they could use for washing and for shaving and things like that. And then when he was in Italy, in his war diary, he actually writes about the food shortages. So, as I said, very against the wasting of water and food. And even now, when I'm brushing my teeth, I make sure I turn the tap off because I know he would not like the water waste. But yeah, just for somebody I never got the chance to meet. Yeah, I think that's rather sweet, actually. But yeah, he's somebody I think should be recognised. Just an everyday chap, came back from the war and started a building firm. And something my aunt said to me recently, actually, he'd probably be quite a wealthy man today because the building firm was doing so well. So if he hadn't died aged 48, he probably would have made himself a small fortune. But hey ho. Okay, let's do William's. So William says, I reckon it should be my granddad's eldest brother. When he was based in the Far East, 1920s to 1960s, he held many positions, including vice consul to Norway, worked for the UNRRA and various shipping companies. He was the spokesperson for the Japanese lines in the Far East Shipping Conference, controlled trade between Europe and the Far East. Secretary General for the Federation of Commonwealth Chambers of Commerce, which was a UK committee, and according to diary entries, a possible spy. I want to read the book. William, are you going to write it, please? Yeah, so fantastic. This is the kind of person that, you know, they're not famous, they're not well known, but they still did great things. And just because they're not a celebrity, shall we say, they're not talked about. I think we should talk about them. And Kim says, mostly mine are classed as notable or renowned instead of what I would call famous. Known in their time, but mostly forgotten now, which is absolutely why we should be talking about them. And Kim goes on to say, does one deserve to be remembered by one act alone or for the good or bad that they did? No, I don't think so. I think it's a combination of things, but sometimes I think some things do stand out. For example, if you received a medal for valor during the war, that would stand out. But I think for me, these events, each one together paints that picture. You know, looking at one in isolation, one event, one good deed, that's not going to tell you a whole lot about the person. If you use them together, that's where you get a better picture of your ancestor, of this person who came before you, which is why we do what we do, right? to build that bigger picture, to make sure they live on through us. Yes. Okay, now let's go to the live comments and we'll have a look. Let's see what we've got. I'm going to scroll right back up to the top to make sure I've not missed any. I'm just going to scroll through the hellos. I'm going to try and find the questions of the week. And I'm just going to keep talking while I try and find them, because just silence, it makes me uncomfortable. Okay, Andrew says, not a direct ancestor, but Edwin Crewe, having set up his own campaigning newspaper in my hometown, moved to Leicester and became the editor of the Midland Free Press. He set up a charity for the blind and built homes as a training school for them. Yes, this is exactly the type of thing I was after, Andrew. Thank you so much. I love it when you guys share. I really, really enjoy reading your stories, because we all have common themes, I think, that run through our stories, but no two are the same. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, I'm still scrolling on to find some more responses. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, Anya, here we go. So Anya says, William Turnbull Dobson, my third great-grandfather. He was a writer in Edinburgh and had a few books published, including one on the Peninsular Wars. Funnily enough, my 5 times great-grandfather on my maternal line was involved in the Peninsular Wars, so a double bonus owning that book. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, I'm scrolling. I would say talk amongst yourselves for a moment while I scroll, but you can't hear each other. So there's just going to be silence if I don't carry on talking. Okay, I'm still going. Here we go. Elaine, semi-famous relative, my great uncle, Walter Cecil Shum, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, was a professor at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 1934, he and a co-professor at MIT were the first to prove that sound can speed up chemical reactions. That is so cool. I'm so here for all of these sciencey and literary discoveries. These are just amazing. Okay, I am still scrolling. Oh no, I think it's got me up to date. William says, take a trip to Oxford. The diary is in the Bodleian. I've always wanted to go to the Bodleian. I have never yet been. My other half is, well, he's no longer a PhD student. He has his PhD now, but he wants to go to the Bodleian at some point. So maybe I will just find the excuse to go with him and have a look at the diary. That would be cool. Yes, Anya also saying we want a book. I absolutely want the book. Okay, yes, Beth. Sorry, I nearly missed you, Beth. My apologies. My maternal grandfather, Max Norman Jones, was a Japanese prisoner of war, and his tolerance and attitude towards the Japanese, he said that it was war and he wasn't anti the Japanese civilians. Absolutely. I think war does crazy people to some people. Crazy things even. Okay, Lloyd, my 5th great-grandfather, Dr. Henry Hunt, the first state apothecary and the first governor of the Apothecaries' Hall of Ireland. His work would be providing the drugs, the chief health official and the overseer of training, licensing and regulation of the medical profession. And like today with COVID-19, he had to deal with plagues, with all those issues. And I used FMP to plan a perfect visit to Ireland, including filing his portrait. I'm so here for all of these answers today. These are really, really good, all of you. Okay, Paul Cashmore was a pistol maker who won the contract for the Royal Irish Constabulary. He and his 2 brothers were also beadles and also bell ringers at their lock church. Paul actually composed the tunes and directed according to the records. I love that. Keep them coming, everybody. Although I do still, you know, when at past, I still have a product update and famous family trees to do for you. Okay, I think I'm up to date with those now. Oh, this one from Julia. My great-grandmother, Sophia Hendy, who was left widowed with several children after the Titanic sank. Gosh. I've said this before, but I was told by my great-grandmother when I was a very, very small girl that she had a cousin who was on board the Titanic as crew. but he didn't survive. I have since asked my grandmother and my great aunt about this, and they don't know a thing about it. So I don't know. My great grandmother, she died in her early 90s, and she was still very with it, and was still going up the hill every day for her lunch. And it's a steep hill where she used to live. It's a steep hill, and I don't know why she wouldn't have told me that if it wasn't true. The only thing I'm struggling with is her maiden name was Smith. So trying to find a Smith from Birmingham who was an officer might be a bit tricky, but the search goes on. The search absolutely goes on. Okay, let me just see if there are any more here. Anya's got another one here. Not an ancestor, but a cousin. Dr. Mary Lee Edward was the first woman to study medicine at the University of Toronto. They called her Hop-Along Mary. Why? Why did they call her that? She was awarded a medal that I can't pronounce for her work in the trenches in France during World War I. She went back and worked in New York and was part of the US women's suffrage movement. This is another one I need a book about. Jen's doing a little dance, by the way. You can't see it, but I'm just going to imitate it. Oh, these stories are amazing. I like books from all of you on these, okay? The books don't have to be just for the famous people. They are for our ancestors because they were awesome too. That's the moral of today's session. Okay. We have Chris here. My maternal great-grandfather, Dr. Daniel Murray, was a doctor with the Royal Canadian Medical Corps in France during World War I. Among other things, he was the only Canadian physician who would treat members of the 2nd Construction Battalion, an all-black regiment. He became known decades later in the diaries of the commander of the Black Battalion. He was depicted in a Canadian documentary in the 2000s. Another one I would like a book on, please, Chris. We will start a book club, and the only things we will be reading are the stories of our ancestors. I can see Jen sort of frantically writing notes, and I have a feeling that she's noting all of these down because she's going to hold you to all of this. When I say book, I don't necessarily mean a full-on book. I mean, if you can get a full-on book out of it, brilliant. But write the stories up, even if it's just in a Word document. Keep them, share them. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of these. This is just wonderful. I'm really enjoying this. Jackie, I have found so many women in my tree who were left widowed early in life, but continue to bring up their families despite all the difficulties. Absolutely. Actually, quite on a similar vein to that, I was doing a little bit of house history this week, and not for my own house, but for somebody else's house. And I found that one of the occupants, early, he was listed in the 1939 register, and he was married to his wife, and they were living together. But when I dug into his family history a little bit, I found that in the 1911 census he was listed as a widower. So then I realized that his wife in 1939 wasn't actually his first wife, that was his second wife. So then I start hunting, and I find a marriage for him in 1903. But then I also went and I knew that the first wife must have died. So then I went hunting for the death record, and I found that she had died. And really, really sadly, they married in January of 1903. She died June 1903, which meant she was already pregnant by the time they married. And also, and this was the kicker, this was really sad, I opened up the burial record, looked at the original image, found her listed there. Right underneath was her 3-day-old daughter. Really sad. And I don't mean to try and bring it all down, but it's just that you're going to find things like this when you do family history or house history. Okay. I'm just going to read Adrian's other one here. Let's have a look. My great-grandmother, Catherine Munro, arrived Moreton Bay, Canada via Greenock in 1879 on the SS Selkirkshire. Selkirkshire? She met her future husband, Frank, on the Brisbane Wharf the day she disembarked, married the next year. Newspaper recorded their 50th year anniversary. Oh, that's adorable. And that also has lifted my spirits again after telling the last story I just told. So thank you so much for that. Okay, right, next, what we're going to do next is we're going to do a quick product update. And I am going to share my screen. so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I do have two screens, so bear with me a moment. Right, hopefully that's worked. Okay, so we have a great product team at Findmypast. They're always making updates, big or small, to improve your experience on the Findmypast website, to make it not only easier for you to find your ancestors, but also more immersive and more educational as well. And today's one, if you haven't noticed already, is map themed. So if you have used the 1939 register before, you may or may not have seen a map feature on your transcript. So when you open up a household, you scroll down and you'll see a map, and it will pinpoint the location of that household. And you are also able to swap between a modern map, a 19th century map, and a 20th century map. So you can see how the area changed through time. I love using these. I use this feature for the map challenge that we sometimes put on social media on a weekend. I just love seeing how an area changes. Another bit of house history I was doing this week, actually, for a particular house on a particular street. On the 19th century map, the road in question was really, really short. And then you hop onto the next map and it's really, really long. And it's just amazing how it changed. Okay. So I am going to show you now, if I just make my window a little bit bigger. So I am going to go into a census search. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to search for my surname, and I'm going to put in 1841 as an example. Let's have a look. And I'm just going to open one of these. I've seen most of them already. I'm going to just open the top one, and I'm going to open the transcript. So here's the transcript, and we've got Charles, we've got Anne, we've got Samuel, we've got Hannah. In fact, these are actually my direct descendants, which is quite cool. They're always direct or very closely related with overthrows, I find. Anywho, I'm going to scroll down, and what I'm going to find here now, just added this week, it's the similar map feature that we've got on the 1939 register. So these maps have been added to British censuses for 1841 through to 1911. So if you've just found your ancestor in a census record, but you're unfamiliar with the area in question, you can now see a map on the transcript, and you can see what the area might have looked like in times gone by. This is actually a modern map, but you can change. If you've got this little button here, you can change to the 19th century map or the 20th century map. We can zoom in, we can drag, and we can move it around like so. And just look how the city of Gloucester has evolved over time. Look, it's just got bigger, like most cities. So there we go. A few things to point out with this. A map will only show if there is eligible data in the transcript. So if the data isn't there, you're not going to get the map. Now, some of you might be wondering, how does this work? So this is how it works. It uses geographic data that is hidden in the transcript. This is defined in advance using a tool that mapped transcribed locations to latitudes and longitudes. That's then pinpointed in this map. It's important for me to point out that only the 1939 register has latitude and longitudes at street level. On the census, we've got the next best thing. So it's not as specific as street level. It'll depend on the information in the transcript. So whether it's the parish, the registration district, the town. This is why when we open up this census record for Anne, this is 1841, it's actually, I mean, it's telling me the street, and then it's telling me, you know, St Mary de Lode and Gloucester. It's why it's not zooming in directly, because the census doesn't have the street detail as the latitude and longitude, but it does in 1939, if that makes sense. So yes, and you can change this, you can zoom in, and you can drag around. I really love the maps. If you've not used them before, they're super, super useful if you're looking up ancestors and you have no idea, you don't know the area, you're not familiar with it, because our ancestors moved around. So yes, the other thing to mention with this is the product team are really keen to hear your feedback, positive, constructive, whatever you've got to say about it. Have a play around with it over the weekend. And if you would like to share your feedback, it would be really, really welcome if you could send it by email to our support team at support@findmypast.com. It will then get logged, tagged, and then passed on to the product team. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm now going to unshare my screen, and we are going to do famous family trees. And when I say famous family trees, you know, you might be thinking, why are we doing these, you know? Because when I was thinking about this earlier, shows like Who Do You Think You Are really popular. But many of us who already do family history often wonder, you know, why don't they research an everyday person's family tree? Why all the focus on somebody famous? Because they can pay somebody to do it for them if they really wanted. And although I love the show with all my heart, and I do think it's wonderful, we don't see the hard graft behind the finding of the records, the connecting of the dots, you know, actually finding these stories. What we're actually only seeing is the end product. But I like to think of it as inspiration. Everyone has stories from their family trees for their ancestors that are just waiting to be found. And also, I think it's sometimes quite nice to take a break from your own family tree, especially if you've hit a bit of a brick wall and you've maybe lost inspiration for it, and maybe it's driving you on the bend. Doing somebody else's family tree, or even house history, for example, it keeps your brain ticking. You keep learning new skills. You find record sets that you hadn't even thought of before, you hadn't even thought of to check. And then you can apply all of that to your own research. So it's not wasted time, because chances are it's going to help you with your own family tree in the long run. So in that vein, this is what I'm going for with this celebratory research. And yes, I am coining that phrase. I'm hoping to inspire you. I will be telling you a little bit about the methodology behind it as well. I'm not just going to be sharing this story and that story. I'm going to tell you how I found it. Okay, how I got from A to B to C to D. But it is important for me to stress that I'm only scratching the surface with this research. This is actually only a few days research, okay? And I don't spend all of my working hours researching. I can't, I would get told off. So there will be things I didn't look at. There will be figures in the family trees I didn't look at. There'll be record sets I didn't check. So just in case you're wondering, this doesn't look like a lot, or I can't believe that's all you found, Ellie, how dare you? It's because I only spent a short amount of time on this. So without further ado, and I do have a couple of photographs to share as well, so I will hopefully try and share those as we go if I remember to. Okay, so I'm going to do Tom Hiddleston first, and we've recently published a blog on Tom Hiddleston's family tree, and it's got most of the information I found in it. I was a bit selective with what went into the blog, and then Alex took that research and did a little bit more on it. So what I'm going to tell you now is a little bit of a mix of what we both found. And I will admit freely that I had a huge crush on Tom Hiddleston about 10 years ago, and I got very jealous when my university flatmate met him while she was working at Wimbledon, but I digress. So on Tom Hiddleston's maternal side, I found out he actually has German links, which is really, really cool. His mother's maiden name was Cervais. I may be pronouncing this wrong. So I started off in the birth and marriage records. This is the methodology side. And I used those in combination to find the details I needed. What I like to do whenever I'm starting off with somebody's new family tree, I start off with them, I find their parents, I find their grandparents and their great-grandparents. I use that as a bit of a base. And I use the birth and marriage records together, and I'll tell you how in a second. And then what I try and do is I try and get as far back as the 1939 register if it's relevant, the censuses, so 1911 backwards, or parish records, because all of those contain more detail than the civil records. So what I do is I will add in a if basically I'll find a birth record, so say Tom Hiddleston's birth record, that'll give me his mother's maiden name, where he was born, the year he was born. So I take that information and I go into the marriage records. I add in Hiddleston as the surname. I add in Cervase as the maiden name of the spouse, and I see what comes up. If I've got too many results at that point and I'm scanning through and I can't see an obvious match, the next thing I do is for the year of marriage, I put in I take the year from the birth record, put that as the marriage year, take 5 years off it, and then put 5 years either side. Then I see what comes up after that. Then what I do is if I still need to narrow it down even further, I will add in the county from the birth record. Not always foolproof because people do move around, but I did get somewhere with this. So I keep repeating these steps. So I go from the birth record to the marriage record, the birth record to the marriage record, until I get back to the 1939 register or the census record or the parish records. And I honestly use this tactic for pretty much anybody's family tree from the UK, from Great Britain. It's also important to know that when you're famous, you normally have a little bit about your family in your Wikipedia page, which is really handy. That's always a great starting point. So using this technique, I mapped out Tom's grandparents and his great-grandparents. And then once I have those, I start digging around for stories. Sometimes the censuses have really good clues. So whether they've got an unusual occupation, birthplaces, relations that are living in the household that you don't quite expect, lodgers. But my holy trinity for finding stories, as in like quite good details, and you can use these together: newspapers, crime records, military records. Not an exhaustive list by any means, but that is a great starting point for finding that real colour for the family tree. So at that point, I start focusing on the individual level. I found that Tom's 3 times great-grandfather, Julius, and his wife, Helene, were born in Germany. I made an educated guess that they probably came early 1860s, I would say, because their first child was born in Liverpool in 1863. And I don't think I found them on the 1861 census either, so it's possibly they came then. They may have come a little bit earlier. So yes, we think, from what Alex found, we think that Julius was born in Dusseldorf and Helene was born in Hamburg. And it appeared that the family left Germany to work in a merchant and baker's company, J.H. Schroeder and Co. He was the company's chief clerk and ran the Liverpool branch with Charles Pickering, who was a well-known from a well-known Liverpool merchant family. He was also, I found from the newspapers, and this is what I mean when you get the real detail from the newspapers, Julius was the Vice-Chancellor of the Liverpool Society of Friends and Foreigners in Distress, which I thought was really cool. Found that in the newspapers, and no doubt I think he was part of that society because of his German links, the fact that he was an immigrant into Britain. So the family lived in a really large house. There were surgeons living on the same street. There were solicitors, really wealthy families. And one of the sons actually studied medicine at the University of Liverpool. I thought that was really cool. And then his son, Julius Maximus Cervase, was a cotton merchant like his father. He travelled widely. And again, he appears in the newspapers a lot. Excuse me a second. I don't know. I've got so many celebrities to talk about. I'm not going to get to talk about them in the next 10 minutes. We might have to save some of these for next time. And then Tom's great-grandfather has a bit of a story too. He was Reginald Maxwell Cervase, and disclaimer, he does have his own Wikipedia profile, but the information I found is actually going beyond that and going into our family history records and pulling stories out from there. So I've not just gone to Wikipedia and pulled some stuff out for you. I've actually gone into our records to explore. So from his Wikipedia page, it tells me he was in the Navy and he was quite well distinguished. He served in both World Wars. So then, the immediate thing I go into is look at his military records. And there was so much for him. It was incredible. I found one record. I opened up the original image, and it is a full list of his promotions and descriptions of his character. And I've included one of them on the blog. And I personally, I like to think of Tom Hiddleston as a bit of a gentleman, right? This sort of typical English gentleman. And I just wonder whether his great-grandfather was sort of the same, whether they were sort of the similar temperaments. I don't know. Anyway, I found him as a midshipman aboard the Indefatigable, that I can't pronounce, in 1911. And no, it's not the one from Hornblower, okay? It's the one that sank at the Battle of Jutland. Different one. So yeah. And when I was hunting for him in the newspapers, I actually found a wedding photo of his grandparents, of Tom's grandparents, William and Patricia. And if I can share my screen, I will show you. Bear with me a second, and I will do that now. I'm just going to share my desktop so you can see. Let's get rid of that. There we go. I'll just make that a little bit bigger. That's Tom Hiddleston's grandparents. Isn't that sweet? I've got more pictures to show you up here, but spoilers. Oh, goodness. Okay, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, I can do this. I can get through all of these. I probably can't. Okay, so Reginald's mother was Constance Violet Coltart. She was born in Ruthin. And immediately I start thinking, oh, Tom's got North Wales links. Maybe we're related. No. A little bit more digging actually told me that Constance was the only one of the children of Joseph and Isabella Coltart to have been born in North Wales. All of the other children were born in Liverpool. And actually, I then went into the newspapers and I found corresponding evidence for this. So it appears that the family moved to North Wales for a short amount of time for work for Joseph, because he was a shipbuilder, a merchant. He had various roles over the course of his life. But in any case, in the newspapers, I found a mention of Joseph, and what happened was one of his servants he took to court because she was found stealing from the family. Again, you just don't get these kind of details when you're just checking, census records and, BMDs. So, yes. I found a bit of scandal in the newspapers as well. So Tom's 2 times great-grandmother, Sarah Vesti, divorced her husband, Edmund, in 1925 because apparently he was cheating on her. So they got divorced. And then on his father's side, it might surprise you to know, it may not. It surprised me. I don't know why I didn't know this. Anyway, the Hiddlestons are actually from Scotland. And I traced the name back through the censuses to Dunscore in Dumfriesshire in the early 1800s. I actually have family from Dalton and Annan in Dumfriesshire. So I'm waiting to find out that I'm related to him, which would be really, really cool. I'm not. Actually, when I was doing the research, there was one name that that's the one surname that stuck out for me, and it was Meekler. And it's very, very similar to the surname of one of the customer support team. So I messaged them and I said, you're probably related to Tom Hiddleston, by the way. that would be amazing. And then the last discovery I found for Tom's family tree was a relative of his called Thomas Hiddleston. He was his second great uncle, and he served in World War I. I found his military record. I found his signature, which I thought was quite poignant. But it looks like that he was injured, possibly at the Battle of the Somme, and later died of his wounds. He had a leg wound, which was really sad. But it was lovely to find his record, actually. I hope that someday, Tom Hiddleston will see all of this and he'll like seeing it. Okay, right, I'm going to let you, we've got like 5 minutes left. I can probably squeeze one more in. So I'm going to let you decide in the comments as to who you'd like to see next. So I'm going to give you the options. Taylor Swift, James Norton, Lewis Hamilton. In the comments, I want you to know who you'd like. Even if you don't know, just pick a name. Just pick a name. Lots of you saying you had to Google Tom Hiddleston. Yeah, if you're not a Marvel fan, you probably won't know. But it's just, even if these people weren't famous, it's just sometimes nice hearing the stories. And again, I'm just trying to inspire you here. Okay, so we've got 2 votes for Hamilton, 3 votes for Lewis Hamilton, 1 for James Norton. Keep them coming. And we'll try and squeeze in another one before we finish. Right, Lewis Hamilton. We're just going to do Lewis Hamilton. Okay, right. Okay, let me find his research. Here we go. I think I've got photos to show you as well. I will just open those up ready. And then we will crack on with those. Okay, so his family tree was actually really, really fun to explore. I did his mother's side, and on his mother's side, he is a descendant of the, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Lobastia family of Jersey in the Channel Islands. They were actually really well-known perfumers, and I found loads of mentions of them in the newspapers. They were actually originally from Southampton. So what they must have done is the family came from Southampton. They would have moved to Jersey and then moved back to the mainland. So Lewis's second great-grandfather, Philip Henry Lobastia, he was initially a jeweler. But when his father, Philip Charles, who was the perfumer and had a business and everything and had a shop, when he died in 1861, it was announced in the newspapers that Philip Henry would carry on the family business. And there are actually photographs I found online of the shop front back in years gone by. That was really exciting. I actually found as well, not 1, but 2 photographs of Lewis Hamilton's great-grandfather, Eric. And I'll show those to you now. Let's share my screen. Let's see if I can make these a little bit bigger. So these are of the same man. I'll need to swap these round. There we go. Okay, so these are from our Merchant Navy records. So the first one shows Eric as a young man, and the second one shows Eric in his 50s when he was applying for a pension. And I just thought these were amazing. And I know it's the same man because they've got all of the same details and they have the same pension numbers as well. If I talk about the Merchant Navy records a lot, but if you've not gone and had a look in them, even if you don't think any of your ancestors were in the Merchant Navy, just check them just in case, because they are so rich with detail and you might even get a photograph. Okay, unshare my screen. Go. And I also found a La Balestia relative in the crime records. This was another jeweler, actually, so it must be a close relation. This was George Henry La Balestia, and he was a jeweler. And in 1874, I think, was he born in 1874? No, he was born in 1874, but in the crime records, he was tried at Clerkenwell for receiving, this is in inverted commas now, this is a quote, receiving 1 gold chain purse and other articles, the property of Mabel Alicia Lowe, well knowing them to have been stolen. I don't know. Anyway, he wasn't found guilty anyway, which is why I didn't find any, well, when I looked, I didn't find any mention of this in the newspapers. But as I said, this is only a few days research. And then on the Towers side, so Lewis's grandmother was a Towers who was born in Stourbridge. I found lots of Midlander ancestors. I found butchers. I found policemen. So yes, as I said, that's just scratching the surface. There are going to be lots more stories, but this is just what I found the time for this week. I'm also currently doing some research into some other actors. Excuse me. Have some more water. Some other actors as well. If there's anybody in particular that you'd really like me to research, just as to inspire, drop it into the comments and I'll see what I can do, basically. And I hope you've enjoyed these. As I said, this research has just been done over the course of the past week, really. I can't spend my entire workday doing this as much as I would love to. So it's just a taste of the kinds of things you can find, a little bit of the methodology around it, the record sets that I've been looking at. And you've got stories like this as well waiting to be found. And sometimes, I mean, I know you're all looking, I know you are, but sometimes I think if you take a bit of a step back, you check a record set that you maybe haven't looked at in a while or you've never checked, And obviously you need a little bit of luck along the way as well. I hope you've enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the research, actually. So yeah. Ruth saying, thank you, good tip about the Merchant Navy. I will have to go and check that out. Yes, let me know what you find, Ruth. That's really exciting. And Maz saying, we'll check Merchant Navy, as I believe my grandfather was in it. Important to say about the Merchant Navy records, actually, there are two different record sets for them. There's a 19th century one and a 20th century one. It's the 20th century one that is more likely to have photographs. Not every record will have a photograph. It just depends on whether one was taken or it survives. Might have fallen out their record. Who knows? Okay, lovely. So we need to wrap up because it's 5 o'clock and you've all got weekends. So couple of bits of housekeeping. As I said, on Monday, Jen is doing a session with Lisa Listener, my cousin, and Josh Taylor of the NYG&B. Make sure to tune back in for that. Jen's very busy next week. Jen's also doing a session on Wednesday for a chat about the original genealogy community, and all will be revealed on Wednesday. Alex is going to be back for Friday's Live. He's also going to have a guest on Friday's Live, but if I tell you who the guest is, it's going to spoil the record set release that's coming next week. And that's the last thing I need to mention. Make sure you check back next Friday to see the really, really exciting record release we've got. I'm so excited. And I can't tell you, and I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm just... Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. Enjoy the weather if you've got nice weather. Do some family history research, and remember, if you have feedback on the maps feature for the product team, support@findmypast.com is the email address to send it to, whether it's positive, negative, constructive. We want to hear it. And also, if you have any more stories like the fantastic ones that you have shared today, and you think they would make a good social media post for Find My Past, or they would be good for PR, for example, please drop them to discoveries@findmypast.com and we'll see what we can do with them, basically. Okay, have a lovely weekend. Take care of yourselves. And Rosie, do a mime for the new record set. I'm not very good at mime. I'm not very good. I'm trying to think how that would work now. No, I can't even mind it. Have a great weekend. Take care, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.